In this video, we're going to be practicing in Eclipse with the concepts of abstract classes and interfaces and static methods and variables. So I'm going to take the same classes that I used when I practiced 5B, 5C, and 5D with you, namely bank account, checking account, and bank runner. And you remember that bank account was a class that checking account extended, and then we used bank runner to test it. I'm now going to change bank account so that this is an abstract class. Public abstract class bank account. Now, as soon as I've created this as an abstract class, now as soon as I save it, watch what's going to happen. I saved it, and bank runner all of a sudden has an error. What happened? I tried to create a variable BA of type bank account, and what's it telling me about? Cannot instantiate the type bank account because bank account is now abstract. So I'm going to comment that out, meaning I can't use it anymore. So I'll comment out all of those lines. My checking account still exists. So I could run it now. All I did was make bank account abstract. Checking account still works the same way. But there was no reason to make bank account abstract unless I was going to do something abstract in it. So what I'm going to do in here is, in bank account, I'm going to say, if you're going to be a subclass of mine, if you're going to be a bank account, you're going to have a deposit method. So I'm going to do public abstract void deposit double amount and put a semicolon in here. Now, all I did was put the signature in, public abstract void deposit. I didn't write the body of the code, what deposit is going to be doing. I didn't write that code. Who has to write it? Checking account has to write it. Once I save this, I'm going to hit Control S to save it. Now all of a sudden there's an error in checking account. Why? Because checking account doesn't have anything in it that implements that method. Look at the error message I'm going to get. The type checking account must implement the inherited abstract method. Okay. I can implement it. It puts in the signature that I needed and reminds me I've got to put some code in here. Well, what do I want my code to do? What do I want my deposit to do? Well, when we wrote this before, we said balance plus equal amount. We added the amount to the balance, and then we incremented the number of transactions. What's happening? I don't have a balance variable. Balance is not visible. I have num transactions. I don't have balance. My checking account extends bank account, which does have a balance, but I can't use this variable in this method. What's Eclipse suggesting I can do? Oh, I could change the visibility of balance to protected. Or I could create a getter and a setter for balance. What it means by that is, in bank account, create something called get balance and something called set balance so that I could use them. Let's just change the visibility to protected because we haven't seen that before. I'm going to do change visibility to protected. Notice it popped me into bank account and it changed private to protected here. If I save this and now go in here, I should be able to use my balance. Now, save this, and the error goes away that says I didn't have something that was supposed to be inherited. So I should be able to use my deposit. Let's just make sure that we know that it worked. I'm going to change my toString in checking account to be I am a checking account, balance equals plus balance and transactions equals plus num transactions. And let's see, do I have all my quotes in the right place? Quote here, quote here, quote there. What's it complaining about? It says, oh, it says I don't want a parenthesis there. Okay. I save this, and now let's see what happens in Bank Runner. Remember, we've commented out everything with banking account, but I am printing out my checking account. Let's do my checking account with a deposit. ca.deposit, and we'll deposit $100. So Mary Smith starts with a balance of 1,000, and now we're going to add 100 to it. Let's run this and see what happens. I am a checking account, balance is 1,100, and transactions is 1. Looks like it worked. Now, let's create an interface. This interface, what should we make it do? Let's create an interface called interest bearing. So anything that implements the interface interest bearing is going to have a method in it called add interest. So how do I create an interface? I'm going to go over here and right click on it, get new. Instead of picking new class, I'll pick new interface. It asks me for a name. I'm going to call this interest bearing. It gives me not public class interest bearing, but public interface interest bearing. And all I put in here are the signatures of methods that I want people to implement when they are interest bearing. So I'm going to do void add interest double interest rate. Hit save. I now have an interface called interest bearing. I'm going to make my checking account not only extend bank account, but implements interest bearing. When I save this, notice Eclipse says, hey, you have to implement the inherited abstract method interest bearing dot add interest. Okay, so let's do that. Let's put in public void add interest double interest rate, and I have to put some code in here, so I'm going to say balance plus equals balance times the interest rate divided by 12. So 1 month's worth of interest. I implement this, save it. Now let's run it, go to Bank Runner and see if it works. I'm going to do my deposit. Then I'm going to do CA dot, what was the name of it? Add interest. And I'll pass an interest rate in of 10%. So let's see what happens. Mary Smith's bank account should no longer be 1,100. We should be adding some interest to that. Run it and see what happens. I'm a checking account. My balance is now $1,109.16 with one transaction. Okay, just a couple more things that I want to do. I want to add a static method to my bank account. Remember, I'm not going to ever create objects of type bank account, but let's put in a static method called public static void print banking hours that takes no parameters. And what does it do? It does a system.out.println. The bank is open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Okay, this is a public static method. So in my bank runner, I don't have to have an object of type BA to be able to use this method. If I want to run this method, I do bank account dot name of method. Eclipse is helpfully telling me, you've got one called print banking hours. Is that what you want? So I'm going to run this. Let's see what happens. It should tell me about Mary Smith and then should print out the banking hours. So I'm going to run it. Here's Mary Smith. And then the bank is open Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Notice I didn't say ba.printbankinghours. I said bank account. Name of the class. No objects of type bank account, but I can still run this method. Last thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a static variable in checking account. So let's go to checking account and create that static variable. I'm going to do private static int num accounts. And I'm going to initialize that to 0. So before I've created any checking accounts at all, the number of accounts is 0. In my constructor, so every time I create a new checking account, I want to increase number of accounts by 1. So I'm going to do num accounts plus equals 1. Or I could have done num accounts plus plus. That'll give me the same thing. So I've got num accounts plus equals 1 here. Every time I create a checking account, the number of accounts goes up by 1. Let's just create a way to display that. Let's do public void print num accounts. Takes no parameters, and all it does is a system.out.println number of accounts equals. And I'll put in that variable num accounts. Save that. Now, if I go to Bank Runner, let's just add the new ca.print num accounts and run it. I should get everything the same as I did before, and it should tell me there's 1 account total. Okay, number of accounts is 1. It worked. Let's make only one more change here. I'm going to create a new variable that's of type checking account. Checking account ca2 equals new checking account. And this one is going to be John Doe. Here's the account number, and John Doe doesn't have any money. Okay. Now I've done nothing with CA2. I've just created it. I'm not printing it out. I'm not doing anything else at all. Let's see what happens when I print from CA the number of accounts. So I'm going to run this whole thing. It tells me the number of accounts is 2. And it's telling me that from CA, even though it was CA2 that gave me the second one. I could print this from CA2 as well, and I should always get the exact same output. Number of accounts is 2, number of accounts is 2, because a static variable is shared by all objects of that same class. Okay, I think you're ready to start taking your Are You Ready quiz and doing programming assignments 9 and 10. Happy programming to you.